This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Matthew Mitchell, who is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, speaker, three-time SEC Coach of the Year, and the winningest head coach in the history of the University of Kentucky women's basketball program. The foundation for his team's achievements is the Winning Tools Principles, which are honesty, hard work, and discipline. Through Mitchell's focus on the fundamentals, he led the program to new heights, 7 winning seasons, and University of Kentucky's first SEC championship in 30 years. His new book, Ready to Win: How Great Leaders Succeed Through Preparation, he shares proven principles that lead to resilience, preparation, and growth. And welcome to the program, first of all, Coach Mitchell.
Thanks so much, Steve. It's great to be with you. I appreciate the chance to connect.
Yeah. And as I hear, here we are, I got some news that I was not aware of. So please share this exciting news with us.
Yeah, so spent a career building my leadership and philosophies in athletics. And so coached for 25 years and then stepped away from that and built the Winning Tools Company over the last 4 years and have great success with that. And we'll certainly talk about the fruit of that. But just recently got back into the profession of coaching college basketball and women's college basketball at the University of Houston, and I'm just so excited. I've been on the job here for a few weeks, and it has been so energizing and exciting, and it's a great opportunity to use all of my leadership that I've been out teaching businesses and leaders. I'm putting it all in action in real time right now, so just thrilled to be here and have this opportunity and continue to grow and learn about leadership and high performance.
Wow, that's amazing. So you just couldn't, that coach itch just wouldn't leave. You had to get back into it, right?
It was time when the opportunity presented itself. It was a no-brainer. It was time to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the Houston program. Now, I think a lot of us are pretty familiar with the men's program because they got to the Final Four and almost won it all. So what about the women's program? Are they competitive?
Well, it reminds me so much of when I took over at Kentucky, and I write about that a lot in Ready to Win, the book that I just released. For all of the great success Kentucky men's basketball had they'd had a century of success in men's basketball that had not been the case in women's basketball. And when I arrived there, the program was really underperforming and is basically at the bottom of the Southeastern Conference. And so I arrived there as an assistant coach first, and the lady that I worked for, Mickey DeMoss, started the process of trying to build Kentucky women's basketball into a winner. I left after a couple of years and took a head coaching job for my first experience of that at Morehead State University, which was only 60 miles from Lexington. And I did that for 2 years as Mickey continued to build. And then she decided to step away, so they brought me back as the head coach at Kentucky, and we finished the job of rebuilding it. We took it from the bottom to, as you alluded to, we were a championship program, and we had really a decade of sustained success there. And so Houston reminds me of that situation. So a lot of great positive momentum here on the men's side. The women's program has not performed to what I believe its full potential, and so that's why I'm here and to get it turned around. And I think I think the opportunity is immense, and the potential is really sky's the limit here for what we can build. So we're going to take it from underperformance to high performance, and that's exactly what I've been out in the corporate world teaching businesses to do the last 4 years. And so now we'll do it with our basketball program.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, let's back up a little bit. So were you a player yourself? Did you enjoy playing basketball growing up, and where did you grow up?
Okay, I grew up in a small town, Louisville, Mississippi, in the east central part of the state, what they call the Red Clay Hills of east central Mississippi.
Yeah.
And we lived out in the country and about 7 miles outside of town. And so we were really in a remote spot. But athletics were a huge part of our entertainment.
Mm.
And I was the youngest of four boys. And so we were playing ball all the time, football, basketball, baseball, whatever it was. And
Yeah.
so I really got inspired in the 80s by the NBA's just really came on the scene with Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Dr. J, and then eventually that gave way to Michael Jordan. Were really the stars of my youth as far as basketball went. So we were in such a small town. We really played everything once it got organized. So we played
Yeah.
football in the fall and basketball in the winter and ran track and baseball in the spring. But I always had a great love for the game of basketball. And so
Yeah.
when I was done with my playing career, I was out in the business world trying to, make my mark, and I was really frustrated. And my high school coach just encouraged me one night. He said, "Listen, I always thought you'd make a good coach. Why don't you come help me and assist me this year?" And that was 1994. And
Yeah.
I took the court with my high school coach as his assistant, and the very first time I was on that basketball court, I was so energized and said, "This is going to be it." So I
Yeah.
started out as a high school teacher and coach as far as my coaching career after just being in love with the sport for a long time.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I can relate. I grew up in a household where my father was a basketball coach and he coached at the college level. It was a Division III school out here in the Pacific Northwest called Pacific Lutheran University.
Yeah.
And I actually went and then played with him as a player while he was the coach son kind of thing going on. And so I know what that experience is like. It's pretty cool. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Us talk a little bit about your time at Kentucky. As you said, it was kind of a program that needed some help, and so that's often a big job. It's no different than a business where you come in and the
Mm.
business is underperforming, and how are we going to turn it around, and how are we going to do this without making everybody mad and letting everybody go and building up to the next level. So you talk a lot about it in your book, Ready to Win, that we're going to refer to a lot here. But tell us a little bit about your philosophy and how you look at a program like that and say, okay, we need to get up to the highest level. How do we do it?
Yeah, it was so interesting where my college coaching journey took me, and what I learned before I had an opportunity to be a head coach. So in that experience of being a high school coach, I would go and work summer camps to learn, and I was coaching both girls and boys basketball in the school, and I was coaching football, and so I was just a sponge for learning how to teach and how to coach, and so I spent an enormous amount of time with um, people who I respected, and they were so generous with their time. But one of the places that I started to go was the University of Tennessee, and the great Pat Summitt was on an
Hmm.
amazing run in the mid '90s of excellence, and so she eventually hired me out of camp and brought me on her staff as a graduate assistant. So she had a system and she had principles that she was rooted to, and she called it her definite dozen. So it was 12 things that she wanted her team to always know, and so that was impactful, and that introduced me to having some type of principles that would inform your philosophy. And I think, you have to start with your principles, then that can form your philosophy, then you can start to formulate a plan. And so I left there and I worked, and so she's a Hall of Fame coach, and many people
Yeah,
are
she's
are
amazing. Yeah.
yeah are familiar with her. She left us way too soon, and may she rest in peace. But then I
Yeah.
went to Florida, and I worked for two more Hall of Fame coaches, Carol Ross and Carolyn Peck, during my time there, and then eventually ended up at Kentucky as an assistant for Mickey DeMoss, who's another Hall of Famer. And so I say all of that to when I finally got my shot to be a head coach, and that was at Morehead State before I got to Kentucky. I decided that I needed to commit to my principles and how are we going to run the program. And so
Hmm.
12 things were a little too hard for me to keep track of,
Yeah.
Steve. And then Mickey DeMoss had whittled it down to 5 things that was still a little bit too hard for me to think about. So I got it down to three guiding principles, and which we ended up calling the winning tools. Because when you think about the cycle, I don't care if it's in a business or a basketball program, you have a fiscal year that you're working with, or you have a season that you're working with, and I don't care where you are, that each year something's going to change. Whether it's personnel in basketball, it's personnel is going to change. In business, regulations could change, or people could be growing and they're changing and evolving. But I always looked at every single year that we started a basketball season, we needed to build that team. And
Hmm.
that was the only year that we had guaranteed to us. So it was a unique opportunity and it was a precious opportunity. And so we needed to build that team. And so when you think about that, so over the course of 15 years at Morehead State and at Kentucky, we sort of built a 15-story scraper that we're
Yeah.
trying to build. And so we needed tools to build that. So that's why I called it the winning tools. And I settled in on three important principles that are real simple but very powerful. So it's honesty was the first tool we were always going to base everything and use to build the program and to build success. Hard work, really important there, and discipline. So honesty, hard work, discipline, those were the principles. And so that really helped us create our two teams at Morehead State had a great success. And so when I got to Kentucky and knew we still had work to do to help us step into our potential, we just tried to make sure we filtered everything through the lens of those principles. And we tried to be principle based in our thoughts. And then that leads us to making some principle based choices that lead to our actions. And so that is when what I showed up at Kentucky having in my mind. And that's where we started to try to build a championship team.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I would assume, tell me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that before Tennessee, you're probably working with men or boys. And now you're gonna go and work, with women in their basketball program. That was probably a jump and a decision like, okay, because you probably have to approach it maybe a little different, and tell me your thought process about that leap.
Well, it was interesting for me because I was a young, inexperienced coach, but I had a lot of responsibility, which ended up being such a great development in a great event in my development as a coach. So I coached both uh, girls and boys. So in
Okay.
basketball, so I coached both teams. So I coached the junior high girls team. I coached the varsity girls team. I coached the varsity boys team in basketball.
Okay.
I was in the classroom. I was teaching boys and girls in football, obviously just coaching the boys. But I didn't have time to do two different, I didn't have time to do two different practice plans or coach the two teams differently. And so I really um, coached, I had experience coaching both the girls and the boys. And so when I got to Tennessee with the women, um, it was such an upgrade in talent, even relative to the high school boys I was playing that I was coaching in this little bitty town in Mississippi.
Yeah.
The athletes were incredible, and it's such a high level, and so that part of it, was not a huge adjustment because I'd been coaching both the girls and the boys, but I feel like my life has been full of opportunity, and I think there's been a purpose behind it. I think I was just meant to coach women's college basketball, and it's been
Hmm.
a really successful but fulfilling career for me. And I've learned so much along that journey.
It's just amazing when you hear your story to think of this again, this little town in Mississippi, and you land a job with the iconic Hall of Fame coach of, who was just in that day and time was, everyone thought she was the bomb. So
Yeah,
what an
yeah,
opportunity.
incredible. It was an
Yeah.
unbelievable opportunity, and I feel so fortunate that it happened. And But I was just one of the many, many people that she impacted in such a positive way. And her legacy of leadership continues to impact people. And I, every day, try to emulate and model the things that she modeled for us and all the people that she led. And so she was an extremely impactful person on this planet.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just going to hold up the book here for those that are looking on video. Ready to Win, that you've written a great book, and I have to ask, when people get endorsements for their book and whatever, I mean, you've got John Maxwell, and you got an interview in there with Peyton Manning. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Well, well, I've just been so fortunate to in my leadership journey to be connected to some remarkable people. And John has been a huge, huge mentor of mine. And I met him about 20 years ago.
Hmm.
Probably 18 years ago, I was at coaching at Kentucky, and I had the good fortune of being introduced to his material. And so the first thing that a friend of mine gave me his leadership Bible, and that just really had a huge impact on me,
Hmm.
and just made that's one of the great leadership books that he ever put together among many that he's written. So then
Yeah.
that introduced me to his content, and I just started devouring his content. So I had books all over the office of John Maxwell. So my student manager, Rachel Arrington was her name, and so she would come in and bring the practice clothes and different things in and
Hmm.
out of the office. And so she said one time, she said, "Coach, I noticed you have a lot of John Maxwell's books in your office. Would you like to meet him?" And I was like, "Of course, I'd love to meet him." She said, "Well,
Yeah.
he's just next door with my grandfather. They're visiting Coach Calipari, who was the John Calipari was the men's coach. They're in Coach Cal's
Yeah.
office now. Would you like for them to come over?" I was like, of course, I'd love for them to
Yeah,
come
for
over."
sure.
So
Yeah.
John comes into the office. John and Coach Cal were doing some work together on a book project, I think. So he comes into my office and sits down, and he starts asking me questions. And I'm thinking, I want to ask John questions, but he's so curious about leadership that he asks so many questions. But we hit it off that day, and have stayed connected through the years,
Mm.
and he's just made a huge impact. And so I was appreciative of him endorsing the book because I've read so many of his, and it was a great moment. And then Peyton and I have a lot of connections back to Mississippi. His mom
Mm.
and dad are from Mississippi, and his dad Archie played at Ole Miss with some of my
Yeah.
relatives, and so there was some connection there. And then, of course, we have a University of Tennessee connection. Peyton was a great quarterback there, and really admired Coach Summit. And so when Coach Summit was diagnosed with early onset dementia, Alzheimer's type, she
Mm.
started an Alzheimer's foundation for research, and so Peyton has done amazing work in the fundraising part of that, and so he and I have been connected through that foundation, and then have just created a great friendship, and
Mm.
both enjoy competition and trying to achieve at a high level. So we've become good friends, and I admire him so much. And you certainly can learn a lot from the interview that we do in the book is
Yeah.
pretty impactful.
Yeah, it really is. It's great. So back to the book, in the book you talk about, I thought it was interesting how you said this, the definition of winning, you say sustained success. So, it's not just, winning one game or winning one championship or whatever. It's that sustained success. So tell us a little bit about what you were thinking when you wrote that.
Yeah, so I think in so many areas of performance, there we see. So let's think about the NCAA basketball tournament. If people are familiar with March Madness, and
Yeah.
so many times a Cinderella uh, team makes a magical run through the tournament, and they make the Final Four one time, and it's just such an exciting story. And a lot of times it's an underdog team that maybe didn't have a great season, but they get hot at the right time. And those are those are incredible stories and great inspiring stories about underdogs and things of that nature. But what I think is more satisfying instead of having these bright flashes of success, is developing a method of living, a method of performing, a system of operation, an operating system in your life that can lead you over time to continue to succeed. So to sustain success over time. And so I think that's the key to really having some satisfaction about your work, is that when and in the book we work very hard to try and let people know what the intrinsic value they'll gain out of just pursuing excellence over perfection and building a way of living and operating that leads you to having success over and over and over, because you develop that system. And so that's what the winning tools has done in my life. And out of the winning tools, out of that, we have a full system how to teach honesty, hard work, and discipline. And we do that through pillar points of each one of the principles. And so preparation is one of the pillar points of hard work.
Yeah.
And when we are prepared, we put ourselves into a powerful position to win. Preparation doesn't guarantee victory, but a lack of preparation absolutely guarantees defeat. I've just seen it over and over and over. So what we do when we prepare well, we start to show up with a chance to be successful. And so in the book, we're telling you over time, if you will use this important pillar of hard work, preparation, you will put yourself in position. And the more you put yourself in position to succeed, your chances of success increase. And so really you start to have these amazing victories in life, these amazing accomplishments. But also what you do when you show up and you put yourself out there, you're prepared, and you take on the risks and the volatility of life, even when maybe you miss the mark or you fall short, or you would call it, I used to call it a loss or losing. But what I've learned through dedicating myself to preparation, that every opportunity I'm faced with, I'm able to learn a lesson, either what we did well to succeed and reach the ultimate goal, or what we learned in falling short. And so that's been the real beauty of my leadership journey, and one of the real benefits I believe that this book can bring to a leader's life.
Yeah. Now you got this new job, and to do all those things you just described, you need the right players on the floor. So, what kind of person are you recruiting? Who do you look for? What's your ideal recruit? And the competition's fierce. So, why is some young woman going to come play for you at the University of Houston?
Well, I think it's so important for a leader to have those principles that we talked about, Steve. So ours are very clear: honesty, hard work, and discipline. So every person that we interact with, we make that plain and make that clear. And I think when you're able to communicate that, you can start to attract those types of people. And so the people who are inspired by that and are inspired by principle-based living, you're going to attract them. And I think that there's really, what we look for are three things that you have to get to a yes on to really pursue something meaningful in your life. So for us right now, we're pursuing excellence next season at the University of Houston for the women's basketball team. And so does the player, or does the person that you need on your team, do they have enough talent? That's the first thing. They have to have enough talent. They don't always have to have the most talent, Steve, but they have to at least have enough talent to compete at the high level that we're trying to compete at. Then the next thing is, do they have the skill and do they have the competency to compete at the highest level? And then the third thing, do they have the right energy? So talent, skill, energy. And that's also for a great test for us as leaders. When we start to think about pursuing something meaningful, high aspirational, do I have the talent? Do I have the skill? Do I have the energy? And so talent is something that we're all gifted with. Skill and energy, skill we can go acquire, and energy is really up to us to either give the energy or find the people with the correct energy. And so as we look at building this roster for next year, we are not just collecting a bunch of talent. We also want to know in our system and how we play basketball, do these players possess the talent, but do they have the skill? So we run a really versatile kind of wide open, high octane. It's not wild and chaotic, but it's fast paced. So we have to have players with a skill set that they can handle the basketball and they can pass and cut and move and do all of those things. So we'll attract those players. And so some players don't have that. So then we move on to the players that do. And then as you watch them play, you can sense their energy for the game. And then when you're in their presence, you can sense their energy for life and for interacting and for being a great teammate. And so that's how we are going through this process. There's never been a more exciting time in college athletics
Oh
to
man,
put a
yeah.
team together because, all of the players. A lot of people are lamenting this fact that how it used to be, but I think all of us as leaders, we have to be dynamic in the way of flexibility. Our principles never change, but our methods and the way that the industry evolves everywhere, you have to be nimble and agile and able to adjust. And so, as I go into building this team next year, I've just enjoyed all the neat people that I've come across, and it's really been interesting, fun, exciting to come across these people and to start putting your team together. And so I think um, one of the lessons that I've learned as I've traveled the country the last 4 years working with high level leaders in business and in industry and in high performance areas, what I have noticed is that the world is changing, and the leaders who are embracing that and who are curious and who are excited about that, instead of lamenting the fact that things are changing and longing for how things used to be, those people who are making those adjustments are going to set themselves up for success. And so I think there's an attitude that we all must embrace, is that times are changing and
Yeah.
change is maybe hard, but it's not always bad. And so I've actually been energized with trying to and with our efforts in putting the team together and
Mhm.
excited about where we're headed.
Well, it is interesting times because I thought for a long time how different it is from business in the sense, you've got 4 years, with a player. Used to say we had 4 years. Now,
Right.
sometimes it's two and sometimes it's only one. Not to mention that you might have a real superstar, someone who's great that may decide to go somewhere else when you're counting on him for next season. So I think when you try and build a program like that compared to a business, where you say, okay, this is going to be, kind of the long strategy here. It's going to take some time and some years and build this culture and do whatever. You don't have that luxury. You got to do it quick.
Well, I think that there's a couple of ways to look at it. I absolutely believe that, and a lot of time I've spent has been in the area of employee retention. What happens, what needs to happen for us to create an environment where people want to stay in our company and people want
Mhm.
to produce here and perform here? Because listen, the reality is the grass has never been greener on the proverbial grass has never been greener on the other side, because people, we're in this information age where information's shared at such an astonishing rate of speed, and the volume we can consume and the various opportunities that are out there, the grass can really look greener on the other side with social media and all the different changes in technology. So I think it brings a certain volatility to life that we have to accept in some respect. And so as leaders, thinking about in the near term, definitely we need the people who can produce and who we can succeed with. But I still believe in college athletics, we're able to build a culture that over time, like building that business, and there may be some churn early on, but what our goal will be here at Houston is to create an atmosphere where people want to stay and people feel
Mhm.
like their goals are achievable, and the people who are helping them and helping them develop toward that are stable and are still interested in transformation and not transaction. And so I believe that until I'm proven wrong, Steve,
Hmm.
I'm gonna pursue every day with great optimism, uh, full of hope that our principles will win out over time, and we'll be able to build a very successful program that has a culture and that is not just constant churn year after year. And that I think if you look at the successful people, because somebody's going to have success in this iteration of the industry.
Hmm.
Somebody's going to play great basketball, and I think it's the people who can minimize the churn and keep some stability in the core of their roster, and then add people in and out at times, and it may look a little bit different, but I'm very optimistic we can build a great
Hmm.
culture here.
Well, you have a long history in collegiate and women's basketball, and for those of us that are fans, it's just been so exciting in the last few years of the surge of women's basketball and finally getting their due and recognition. And there's stars we know and can name. Where the past that was hard. So you're coming in at a great time. I mean, not
Yes,
that
but
you're coming in, but back, let's say,
yeah,
back
coming
into it.
back, yeah, it's
Yeah.
very exciting, and there's more enthusiasm, I think, now than ever. And that's what you tap into, and you all the energy that's positive can be a benefit. And so I was just out this past weekend watching high school players play, and it's just amazing the amount of talent. I was in four different spots all over the country over the course of 3 days, and it was really inspiring to see these great young athletes, and I think they're inspired by the tremendous boom in popularity, particularly in the collegiate game and the professional game. Both are showing, um, incredible heights and spikes in their popularity, and so I think it's good for the sport.
Yeah, for sure. Back to the book, you also talk about the five C's that in your preparation talk. So tell us about those.
Yeah, so it's the five levels of preparation, and we're trying to move you to the the highest levels of preparation. And so, I would think that most people that are interested enough in preparation probably don't fall into the first two levels, which are just casual and what we call cursory. That casual is someone who doesn't prepare a whole lot. And cursory are people that just sort of do surface preparation, bare minimum. But then I think where most of us can examine what level we are, that third level is called compliant, and that's where we do everything that we're supposed to do. We check all the boxes. There's really nothing left incomplete. But what we suggest and what we teach people in the book is how to really get to level four, which is committed. And
Hmm.
a committed level of preparation really takes us in a performance perspective to a level where we start to outperform other people. So when we start paying attention to the details, and we start to really put our mind and our soul into engagement, we're engaged in the process of preparation. And so we talk a lot about how to do that and what that looks like. And then that fifth level, that highest level that we can all aspire to get to. And I give some examples of some of the great people I've been around that I believe are in that constant stage of preparation, where their system is so well formed, and they are so dedicated to it and attached to it that they are just constantly prepared. And so
Hmm.
we're just trying to move most people from level three, and we want you to live firmly in level four, and striving for level five. And so it's just a way to let people examine where they are in their preparation. And I think what the book illuminates, particularly, is people have been in the same position for a while. I think there's some possibility to get stagnant, and hey, we've done it this way we've always done it this way, or the level I'm on now works and it's good enough. And so with the book, we're just trying to inspire people to really engage in their preparation. And when they do that, their performance will be impacted in a very positive way.
And then you also bring up though too the preparation killers. So sometimes you think you're going to prepare, but it can go sideways. So what are the preparation killers?
Well, the one thing that the one thing I'd highlight on that is I've learned a lot about procrastination and what happens there.
Hmm.
And so for so long, I believed that procrastination was a form of laziness. And so when I would procrastinate, I'd really beat myself up, but I found it hard to activate and get going. And
Yeah.
so in the book, one of the things that I believe readers would find interesting is finding that place in the book where we are trying to, where we really show you how procrastination can really be rooted in perfection, in a pursuit of perfection.
Hmm.
And I did not know this about myself. It took a lot of work and discovery, and finally, um, through some searching and trying to find out what was going on, I got with some wise counsel, and one of my great mentors in life is a an executive coach out of Boulder, Colorado. His name's Jim Warner, and he really taught me this part that uh, my procrastination was rooted in this perfectionist streak that I wasn't even aware of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when we want to achieve something great and we're trying to prepare for something really big and consequential in our life, what I found was happening was I wanted to get the whole plan perfectly in place before I activated and started. And so subconsciously, my brain would know that it was not all perfect, and that's what I was
Right.
trying to do. So that's where the
Yeah.
procrastination didn't come from laziness; it came from this perfectionist streak. So the shift is instead of chasing perfection, we shift our mind to being excellent. And so
Yeah.
perfection is rooted in being the best. Excellence frees me up because it gets rooted in being my best. And so
Yeah.
instead of just put your best foot forward and begin and activate, and when we do that, now we can start on the path of formulating the plan, and it frees us up. And instead of perfection paralyzing me because I look at all the obstacles in the way, excellence exhilarates me and opens up all the opportunities that I have to get prepared.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and I think we see that all the time in business as well, where people are waiting till it's perfect before they launch it, and that never happens. And so, sometimes I've said this on this program before. Sometimes you have to shoot before you aim. You got to get rolling. You got to get going. And then you can make
Yeah.
adjustments and learn from your failures and whatever. But if you wait till it's perfect, it probably not going to happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. Let's go back to the business world a little bit. Now, you spent 4 years in the business world coaching and teaching and lecturing and being a keynote speaker and doing all those kind of things. Um, what did you like about it? What did you learn from it? Um, how is it different than being a coach at the collegiate level?
Well, I found what I liked about it was performance has so many similarities no matter what area that is where you're trying to perform. And so I found it so interesting of the parallels between athletics and people who are really trying to succeed in business. There's so many parallels there. And so that was fun to make those connections and to see that there's so many common traits in that we can learn from each other. And so no, and so I was not helping people on their area of expertise. So I wasn't going into an accounting firm and helping them be better accountants. We were
Right.
working in their so how they could perform better as a team. And so it didn't matter if it was accounting or banking or if it was hotels or if it were auto parts. I mean, I spoke to a lot of different businesses, but I love the common thread that I learned was people working together that is where performance either happens or that's where performance lacks. And so I enjoyed that part. I really enjoyed um, meeting all these different people and seeing that we're all very similar in a lot of ways in how we want to um, really perform well, and there's that intrinsic value and doing a good job and connecting with that. Another thing that I enjoyed was so many times when you're talking to a 17 or 18-year old and you're really talking to them about the value of building your character, it doesn't quite click. When I walked into these rooms, these people were very, very um, attuned to the fact that they needed the instruction and they were hungry for the instruction, and I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
trying to convince them. So many times with my players now, you know, they're like, what in the world are we doing all this for? And it takes them maybe 7 or 8, 10 years to come back and go, oh, now I got it. I
Yeah,
understand what you're doing, coach. So I love the
exactly.
audience was really hungry for what we were telling them and teaching them. And but the other similarity was when I got great satisfaction when I would get the feedback that, hey, we improved our performance. We're succeeding more. We're winning more. We're at a different level. That gave me great satisfaction, just as it does when you see a player come in and you help her develop, and then she can come back and go, "Wow, I really am performing well now." So there was great
Mm-hmm.
satisfaction and so many similarities, many more similarities than differences, and I was a bit surprised at that.
Yeah. I think the key word there was development, and development means in a lot of different ways. It reminds me of the story I think I read once where Phil Jackson got the job at, the Chicago Bulls, and he came in and he said, before that, my job as a coach was to um, help players be better basketball players. And I look at Michael Jordan and I'm like, well, what in the world am I going to do to help him be a better basketball player? He's probably the best there ever was.
Yeah.
So he said, so I just focused my 100% attention on Michael Jordan just to be a better leader. So he, worked on those kind of things, and we've all, know the story and seen the success and whatever. And I thought that was really profound because, yeah, sometimes we get hung up on the skills or the techniques or the more analytical things when really, if you help somebody develop
Mm.
themselves and develop their leadership skills and whatever, then those other things come around.
Yeah, that's one thing that in my coaching, whether it be in the business world or athletic world, our focus, our number one focus is on the person first. Because if you really want to have someone develop their skills and increase their competency, you can just put rocket fuel into that process if you'll invest in them as people and you will build some trust. We were talking about the pillar point of of hard work being preparation, and that's what the book's on. But a pillar point of honesty is dependability. And
Yeah.
we teach, people will only trust you as much as they can depend on you. And so as leaders, if we'll show up and we'll be um, dependably positive, dependably honest with people and tell them what the objectives are and what we expect out of them, and be dependably available to answer questions or clarify, to be dependably curious as to what helps them, what makes them tick. These are the things that we can invest in our team members. It doesn't matter if it's a basketball team, a bank, or a startup out in Silicon Valley. If we will invest in the people, then all of the production that comes with increased skill and competency and energy, that's just going to be I've seen it over and over. That's just multiplied. Performance is just multiplied, and great performance is multiplied when we really invest in our people first. And
Yeah.
that's something that we talk about in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think when you look at, college basketball or any college sport, you have, yeah, as you said, 17, 18, 19-year-olds coming in and the amount of pressure that they're under. I mean, playing on the floor in front of all these people watching them in the stands, let alone the TV. And I think it's a different level of pressure compared to the business world, maybe other than the CEO and a few high profile executives, you don't have that kind of exposure pressure. And I'm sure you have to spend a lot of time helping them deal with that kind of pressure.
Yeah, so what we do is on the front end, really invest in that concept of excellence, Steve, and getting them away. I think where we put so much pressure on ourselves is when we start comparing our performance to people that we perceive are doing better than us. And that comparison
Hmm.
really slows us down. And so, what we try to teach in business, but particularly to your point of a young basketball player who might be feeling this pressure of performance because she feels like she has to be perfect, we try to flip that comparison and instead of comparing yourself to a player that you admire, be inspired by that player and
Hmm.
just and try to find something that they're doing that just two or three things that you admire about them and let that inspire you to work on that in your life and in your game or your competency in a business. And so that's been a huge lesson that I've learned over time is when
Hmm.
I tried to compare myself to Pat Summitt or to Gino Auriemma or these great champions of the game, when I would compare myself and I'd say, well, look what they've accomplished and look what I've accomplished, then that's going to leave me feeling less than or empty
Yeah.
or not accomplished. But when I look at how I'm inspired by their level of excellence and I listen to how they explain their excellence, I pick something out of that that resonates with me and I'm inspired by it. And then I figure out how can I incorporate that into being my best. And so that's a message that on the front end we are delivering to our players. And I think that that's exactly what we should deliver to our important team members in our business, no matter how you construct that or how that's organized. I think that's a message a leader can send on the front end to help them cut through all the noise that comparison can create in their mind and in their spirit that keeps them unsettled. And I think that is something that comes in is so useful for the leader when we can communicate that to our performers.
Yeah, absolutely. In the book, you bring up the I think it's called the Rise and Brine restaurant.
Yeah.
Tell us the story behind that. Why is that
Yeah.
in the book?
My brother-in-law, my wife Jenna, her brother Matt, and our sister-in-law Betsy had a very successful restaurant, have a very successful restaurant in Lexington, Kentucky called East End Tap and Table. It's a gastro pub and just a fantastic restaurant and popular there in the city. And on Saturday and Sunday they have brunch, and he started brining this chicken and frying it, and he had a fried chicken biscuit on the menu every Saturday and Sunday morning. He's like, Matthew, I'm selling out of this stuff every Saturday and Sunday morning. And he said, I have this thought that we could maybe get this as a concept that could take off, Rise and Brine chicken biscuits. And so the name just the marketer in me, I was like, man, that sounds great. And the product is great and the food is great and the name's great and the story's great. And so in the book, I'm just saying that our goal there, we have a dream of a Rise and Brine being in every, state in the United States and becoming a great success story in that industry. That's our dream. But what we want to do first of all is we want to build the concept very solid. And so taking the idea of really creating excellence and not getting over our skis and not getting too excited and not trying to skip steps and open 10 or 15 stores, but just really dialing in and getting this first store, making it a great success and learning all those lessons. And then we'll see. Maybe it becomes the next great restaurant empire, or maybe it's just one
Yeah.
single great restaurant. But what we're doing is we're preparing every single day for what needs to happen now in the near term, but we're also preparing for the future and looking into everything we would need to do in order to open location number two, and then location number
Yeah.
two will become three, and three hopefully becomes 30. But the point is, we're staying focused on executing well, preparing each and every day to deliver a great product, but also keeping our eye on what could future success look like and preparing for that as well. So that's the story we're sharing about Rise and Brine. And if you're in Lexington, Kentucky, stop over at 333 Romney Road and get you a good chicken biscuit. It's an
Yeah.
amazing product.
That's awesome. I think a lot of us that study leadership, it's easy to say, oh yeah, great leaders inspire people and motivate people and help them learn and grow and all those kind of things. But you also make the statement in the book that great leaders are great systemizers. And just kind of what you explained with the restaurant, I'd imagine that you got to systemize that, and so bringing systems to the
Mm.
organization, whether it be basketball or business, is really important.
Yeah, it's so I'm seeing it play out in real time, Steve. All of the systems that we've created in the various areas of our business, but we also develop those from all the areas from our basketball program. So now, as we have hit the ground running in Houston, and in the few short weeks we've been here, people are like, "Wow, this is really moving at what seems light speed," but it's because for us, we knew exactly the systems we needed to put in place. Those systems informed us and guide us in our preparation. And when you take the time to put as many systems as you can in place, it frees you up to be creative. It frees you up to be productive. It frees you up to come up with some ideas that you can unleash because your structure's in place. You're not wondering like, what's the next step? What are we doing now? What do we need to do? What needs to happen in 6 weeks? Or the system's in place. And so I would invite everybody just to really look at their business and pick out the important areas, and I'll describe it in basketball sense. So we have personnel, that's the coaching staff, that's the roster. So that could be your C-suite and that could be your sales team, however that's organized. But there's systems in place for how we perform, how we teach, how we coach them. There's marketing for us. There's marketing for your business. We have a system in place. We know exactly how we're going to get people excited here in this city and in the state of Texas about Houston women's basketball. We already know what we're going to do, and what areas we need to accomplish and what we need to what our checklist is to market the program. And so you can just go through your business and you can make certain that your systems are solid. And I think it's one of the real keys to being a level 5 preparer.
Yeah, for sure. So, Coach Mitchell, in anticipation of our discussion today, is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to be sure we can get in the program today?
Yeah, I would just invite people. We have some great leadership products that you can activate in your business, that can move you forward, and I think you'll see tremendous increase in productivity, increase in your employee satisfaction when you lead well. And so I would just invite everyone to go to coachmatthewmitchell.com and look at our products there. We have some very exciting resources that can boost anyone's business. And also, I have a few speaking dates throughout the year that you could inquire about, that I'd love to come in and help your team move forward, and really equip them with some leadership content that is applicable and can really work into their real life. And then we have a great podcast, Coach Matthew Mitchell Show. I'd invite everybody to come listen. We have an episode out every Wednesday, and it's all about the winning tools, honesty, hard work, discipline, and how you can bring those alive in your life and your leadership. And we try to do that in a fun and entertaining way. And so I'd invite everybody to check out the Coach Matthew Mitchell Show. And then I'm on all the social media platforms at Coach Matthew Mitchell. So would love for people to engage, and would love to help people in their leadership and personal growth journey. And of course, the books are anywhere. You can buy books online. My first book, Winning Tools, and then second book, Ready to Win, that we've discussed today. So
Yeah.
I'd invite everyone to engage with us.
Yeah, that's great. At this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question. So that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
I think the greatest thing that I learned, we talked about Coach Pat Summitt, and if people aren't familiar with her, they should look her up. She was truly one of the great leaders of all time. And basketball was just the vehicle that she led, but her leadership was incredible. And I think the out of all the great things that she was known for, the thing that I admired the most was consistency. And I think there's just so much power. And once you can get in touch with your principles, and you need to figure out what you're attached to and what drives you and what drives your desire to do your best. For me, it's honesty, hard work, and discipline. The thing that I learned from Coach Summit that was unremarkably remarkable, because it was not fancy, but she was so consistent each and every day, and she knew who she was. She knew who she wanted what she wanted her organization to be, and she consistently showed up with tremendous focus and energy on that each and every day. And I think that's an amazing lesson that I learned, and it's the one thing that I try to impart on everyone that I learned from the great Pat Summitt, that I try to model. And I think we can all do that, and that's all within our grasp as leaders. But being reliably consistent to your principles and committed there is the one pearl of wisdom that I would love to share, and that I try to that I aspire toward every single day.
That's awesome. Well, Coach, this has been a real pleasure. I'm excited for you and your new endeavor here, and the book's fantastic. It's a good read, and I think there's a lot of good practical things in there. And gosh, I'm going to be watching the Houston women's team now to see how they do. So that's exciting, and I know you're a very busy man, especially now with all you got going and trying to get this program up. So I appreciate your time today, and thanks for being on the show.
This has been awesome, Steve. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for giving me an opportunity. It was a great visit today, and I look forward to the future. Thanks so much.
Okay, well, good luck. Cougars, right? They're Houston
Yeah, go
Cougars.
Cougs.
Go
Absolutely. The
Cougs.
Houston
Okay.
Cougars. Yep.
Oh, well, good luck and have a great season. Take
Thanks
care.
so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.